7 names, no games as I run it down the line. We got Kenny Ken, put 100 on the tees with the streak for the cash. ESPN, Seth Curry with the shot. The prodigy. In reality, he's more like Seth, but he's all we got. Up next is Gentleman Jack, better known as Junior Blue. We told him not to do it anyway, but he did what he do. To his right is Devin, that dude, Eldad or Dirt Ass Dan. Just don't ask him a question, cause then he'll answer your question with another question, and then he'll add another question on top of that question. Damn. And I'm Red O, the Buck Wild Problem Child.
Flow Butter, aka John Cutter.
It's the league ambassadors, and we playing to win. At the 2-yard line, and make no mistake, we running it in. Pete Carroll, we see you.
Thank you for visiting 32 Kings Road, hosted by the league ambassadors. I'm Ambassador Kenny Ken, and it is my pleasure to be here today with my brothers.
Yes, sir.
This is episode 49 of our show, and today we will continue our NFL International Series preview by discussing the history of the Los Angeles Chargers. We will also look back.
There is none. One season.
We'll also look back on week 2 of the NFL season. We'll discuss some hot topics, make some game picks for you. We also got some propositional recommendations. We've got a full show. Let's get into it. Dad, what you sipping on, sir?
I'm not drinking anything until this weekend. But what I am sipping on is the NFL's most important but irrelevant position on the team. And that position is not even considered a football player by most standards and most players. But they consistently decide games, especially this weekend. There were more missed kicks than... only one other week had more missed kicks this century than this weekend. There were 19.
This century?
This century.
Yikes.
19 missed kicks in total. The record was 21. 5 of which decided the outcome of games. 2 kickers have been cut since then. Browns kicker Zane Gonzalez was one of them, and he had a groin injury, and we talked about it before the show. They knew about it, and they sent his ass out there anyway.
You said he didn't know.
No, the team said he knew.
Oh, my God.
But, I'm just glad that I have the best kicker on the planet because I wouldn't have to deal with this bullshit.
Red O, what you sipping on, baby?
After every victory, baby, you're going to have to deal with it. Your turn, Kevin.
What you sipping on, Kev?
It's clear that winning is new to some of us.
Yes, sir. Very much so.
I ain't mad at you. I ain't mad. I'm sipping on some Cruzan rum, something light to get me through. Must win on Sunday. But most importantly, I was watching, catching up on my shows this past weekend, and y'all remember Glenn Big Baby Davis for the Celtics?
Yeah.
He went from winning championships with them to now he's apparently a bodyguard for a gay prison rights activist on Shameless, which I think is interesting because art is definitely imitating life here. Because I think before 2018 is over, Big Baby may actually be in jail. So, something to keep an eye out on.
Well, speaking of jail, I'm sipping on white collar crime getting due process in the NFL. Unless my lying eyes deceived me, that was Michael Kendricks, our first Brexit boot bag winner of the year this season. That was on a football field, right?
Yeah.
And this guy did cop to being an inside trader, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Does that make him a convicted felon?
He's
federal.
He's for sure going to jail. He's for sure going to jail. And they said last night on the telecast that he's appealing his suspension with the NFL. Now that's fine. You want to appeal the suspension? Go ahead. But How long is this appeal process? Because you are going to prison. It's already been decided.
He like, let me get a couple more checks. That's what I told him last time. I was like, he a hustler. He getting game checks before he go to jail.
I know of several NFL players that were just accused of crimes that were suspended and were not playing. And yet you've got this white-collar criminal officially.
What's the root word? Exactly.
hey, Eric Reed is somewhere mad as shit.
Junior Blue, what you sipping on, sir?
I'm sipping on this mango cart right here. And I'm staying away from hard liquor because the Raiders might push me there. So I'm staying away. Shit. Saturday night.
Wait a minute. Is it 3 weeks in and nobody's drinking liquor? Is that where we're at?
Except
for the drunk.
You know.
It's been a long 2 weeks.
For real.
I won.
So Saturday night there was a fight, a mega fight.
There was.
A good fight.
Talk about it.
Between Triple G and Canelo. And I want to know from y'all, what the hell was the story of the fight? And who was winning the story of the fight? Because Max Kellerman said it 1,000 times. Canelo is winning the story of the fight. As he's getting hit in the face 1,000 times. 1,000 times, he kept saying, but he's winning the story of the fight.
I'll start it off. You want to know the story of the fight?
Yes, what was the story of the
Kenyon,
fight?
it's called an agenda. And there are two biggest fighters on this network, and they're both up for renegotiation. So who do you go with? You go with the younger horse.
Fighter.
And it was just, I agree with you. I think it was a great, all-time great middleweight fight. But I think it's marred by how the commentators called the fight. And for me personally, and you know, this is boxing, so we can argue this, but I thought Triple G won the fight. I thought this was closer to the first one to a draw, but if you look at down the stretch, I think he won the fight. But the thing that stood out to me the most was how the commentators were calling it, just like that. And I sent the video to the group because I watched it a second time, and Roy Jones is pointing out a replay where Triple G lands an uppercut, and he talks more about the punch that Canelo missed, that if he did land it, it would have been some trouble. We might have had a down fighter. Not mentioning that he got rocked and his head turned all the way to the side. I mean, I had it 2-2 going into the fifth, and I had Triple G winning from about the 7th to 8th to the 11th, and I think the 12th round was a toss-up. So, at worst, it's a draw.
And that's the thing I said. I said this was more of a draw than the first fight. It was a great fight to me. Action. Canelo, he stood there. He stood there the whole fight.
He went forward.
And exactly. So, I mean, I don't know, though. It didn't.
Well, all you got to do is look at Al from a different network.
Yeah.
He got on Twitter and said, look, we know who won that fight.
Again, yes. Like, it's more of the same. Like, Canelo... You give credit to Canelo
absolutely
for fighting,
and we show him all the time.
Yes,
but that was his best
for
performance.
standing in the middle for standing in the middle of the ring and fighting. He's got layers as a boxer. I respect him a lot. The talent is there, but he didn't win that fight. And for me, you know, the old adage is that, you know, sports imitates life. There are a lot of parallels between things that you experience in life and what you experience in sports. And what didn't feel good to me was that here you had a guy who was the champion in GGG. And you want to talk about things that commentators across all networks say. They say, you've got to beat the champion.
Yeah.
GGG was not beaten on Saturday night.
You know who surprised me the most? Jim Lampley. Usually Jim keeps it real. And don't get me wrong, I don't agree with a lot of people who say this was a robbery. The fight was too close for it to be called a robbery.
I think it was, though.
I think it's
Let
a
me
robbery.
finish. Let
I
me
think it
finish.
was a
Let me
robbery.
finish, though. But there are fights where in boxing where it's like, God damn, come on, son. You know, like Adelaide Bird's card the last time. You know, that was idiotic. I don't think anything was to the point where it was that level because it still was a close fight. And I can see a judge seeing things that look like they were hits and were misses, you know, and actually one judge giving it to Canelo. But I don't think he should have won the fight. I agree with all you guys to say, you know, it was either a draw or GGG won the fight. All I'm saying is I don't think it was a robbery, which is saying a lot.
As much as I love watching the fight, I agree with everything you guys said. I enjoy watching it. But again, this is why I personally don't get caught up in boxing, because in professional sports, you have one side against another, and whoever performs the best is supposed to win. In no other sport does this type of controversy happen more than in boxing. I get it. It's the hoopla, it's the entertainment, but it is frustrating to the point Kenyon made that when someone is a champion and is the best in their sport, that in order for that belt to get taken from them, they have to get beat. And what I thought was interesting was that you guys talked about the commentary around the fight. I saw something earlier. It was a statement that Oscar De La Hoya made. And I think it's interesting that anytime you release a statement with this much detail, you covering up some bullshit. And part of the statement he made was that clean punching, ring generalship, effective aggressiveness, and defense are what the judges are looking for in determining the winner of a round. I don't think all three judges are always looking at the same thing. And to me, that's a little frustrating. And then when you look at how every other media outlet viewed the fight, of 18 media outlets scoring, about 10 ruled in favor of Triple G, 7 scored at a draw, which I think may have been more reasonable, and only 1 scored the bout for Canelo. So with the 2 fights that they have under that belt, do you guys see, or would you be interested in a third fight?
I don't think Triple G wants it. He walked out of the ring and was like, I can't get a break. And as I agree with you, I don't think this was necessarily a robbery, but it was a robbery because they robbed him the first fucking time. So it's compounded.
Sins of the first, right? Okay, right. I got you.
So, I mean, that's what I'll say. I mean, Triple G landed more punches in the entire fight, but in 10 of the 12 rounds. He out-jabbed him by a whole hell of a lot. And
Canelo was the only fighter that was hurt clearly in the fight. He was rocked twice, actually. Again, taking nothing away from Canelo. But it's hard for me, as you said, there were 4 clear rounds where GGG won the fight. Show me 4 clear rounds where Canelo won. And then we can talk about what's a draw or talk about Canelo winning. The agenda was there, and it makes me feel like it's not just with the network. I feel like because again, the question has to be asked, let's talk about it. We watch boxing. If Canelo loses this fight, where does he go from here? GGG, he can retire if he wants. He can also come back for a third fight. That's fine. That's money makers for him. But Canelo is young. His boxing, he's got more bars left on his boxing life. If he loses this fight to GGG as a draw, as a face for boxing, where does he go from here?
Everything changes.
Everything changes. So there's more incentive, to your point about the network, there's more incentive, there's more motivation to have Canelo be this guy, to be this, and to also look at what happened. This man tested positive for drugs. He basically took a year off of GGG's career because
Who's older.
Exactly. This rematch should have happened in May. And now, you know what I mean? So it didn't feel right. And so, and it just, for me, it's why I love sports. Because sports has that ability to really touch your core and make you feel emotions, feel raw emotions. Yeah. It just didn't feel right. It didn't feel right.
And I think it marred the fight itself because it was a great fight.
It was a great fight. And we've said it before because we shit on Canelo a lot because we don't like him. But that man can box.
Abel Sanchez, who was hard on Canelo throughout the promotion of this fight, he said, listen, and he said, I take nothing away. The judges saw what they saw. But he said, I'm just happy for Canelo because he fought the way that I wanted him to fight. As a competitor, he stood in the middle of the ring and he made it a fight. And he said, I wish that GGG would have made it a fight. He was like, but it's hard for me as the manager. I'm just a trainer on the outside. It's hard for me to say what a guy is going to do. We can train for whatever. We train for this type of fight with Canelo, but for whatever reason, GGG didn't engage with him the way that he wanted him to. So again, taking nothing away from Canelo, great job. He's a great boxer. Like I said to you that night, Deb, he's got levels to him, and once again, he showed that.
And that chin is real.
And the unfortunate thing is it almost seems like they judged the second fight in conjunction with the first one instead of judging them as 2 separate entities, but that's boxing.
Do we see a third fight?
Yeah, I mean, that night, that's how we felt. Like, I don't think it is.
It depends because how much money they come back with, because Canelo's not going to fight his mandatory, who is Charlo, I think.
Charlo is his mandatory.
They're not going to do that. They're gonna put that smoke out quick.
I think he beats Charlo though.
Yeah, but it's too much of a risk.
I don't.
Nah, he
I mean,
just
at this point,
toe to
there's no
toe with
risk.
GGG.
Yeah,
he can beat Charlo.
You think that's interesting? You think he beats Charlo? I think what I said to you Saturday, Neps. I think there are probably 2 or 3 fights that Canelo are in that I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if Canelo won. I wouldn't be surprised
no more
if he
doubts
lost.
about Canelo. There's no more doubts. His chin is granite. He can take whatever Charlo throws at him. And he's a better boxer than Charlo.
He's a better okay. Interesting. All right, let's get to our history segment, moments in hand egg. Once again, we the league ambassadors, because we are focused on engaging and creating more fans globally of popular American sports. We, in tandem with the NFL, we preview and we look at the teams that are going over there for the international series. We have examined the history of the Seattle Seahawks. We've looked at the Oakland Raiders. And now it's time to look at the Los Angeles Chargers, who will be going over and playing, I believe, the Tennessee Titans. They're playing the Tennessee Titans on the 21st of October. And so what we wanted to do was first look at the history of the Chargers and identify who we feel like should be on the Mount Rushmore for this organization. For those of you that may not know, the Los Angeles Chargers is a relatively new thing, just like I'm a relatively new fan of the Los Angeles Chargers. They actually historically were the San Diego.
If they didn't win this weekend.
Yeah, if they had lost to Buffalo.
Right. It might have been a wrap. It might have been a wrap. They are known traditionally as the San Diego Chargers. They moved here to Los Angeles 2 years ago. One player that we all had as being worthy of being on the organization's Mount Rushmore, of course, is Mr. LaDainian Tomlinson, who the best way that I could describe how great he was as a player is to say that when you think of football players named LT, you are actually forced to think of 2 players. Yep. Lawrence Taylor is the Mr. LT, but at the same token, LaDainian Tomlinson is also an LT.
Well, we were forced to say LT because we can't pronounce his name. It's so goddamn long. But
I think I just did it 3 times and for a 4th time. LaDainian Tomlinson. Kevin, talk a little bit about why you had LT on the Mount Rushmore for the Chargers.
Sure, yeah. Omar has a point, though. His birth name is LaDainian Tremaine Tomlinson. But it's hard for me to call him LT. I have a much more applicable nickname for him, the biracial sensation, since he wanted to announce that he was of mixed race and is the face of America. And we're not going to forget that in his Hall of Fame speech. But anyway, moving on. I think we all went with Mr. Tomlinson.
Hey, Kevin, that's what happens when you grow up in Texas, man. You get,
brainwashed.
You get brainwashed.
They need to test his brain.
come on, son. Let's get back on track. Let's get back on track.
Omar, you're right. You're the adult in the room. I'm sorry. So, yeah, we went with Tomlinson. He holds 40. That wasn't a jab.
But it
40
was.
Target franchise records. Just a little bit. He's the first player in NFL history with 1,000 yards rushing, 100 catches in the same season, which kind of reminded me of the conversation we had last week about Marcus Allen, his ability to do it all coming out of the backfield. Fastest player to ever score 100 touchdowns. He had 5 seasons where he averaged over 4 yards a carry. And all 9 seasons with the Chargers, he had 10 or more touchdowns. So you just look at what he was able to do for that time frame. But unfortunately, when Marty left, Marty Schottenheimer left, so did LT's abilities, and made a great career, though.
I think the thing that stands out to me is he's at least top 3 best receiving running backs of all time. And there's a couple people you can mention with that. But his versatility, he's also one of the best non-quarterback passers of all time. He has 7 touchdown passes. He's second all time in rushing touchdowns behind Emmett by a lot, but he's second. And I don't know if anyone will ever get that close because of how the game has changed. But yeah, he's 6th all-time leading rusher.
Holds a single season record for most touchdowns in the season, rushing, and combined touchdowns with 31 in one season. one thing that got me about him is the fact that he was a receiving back, but he also ran in between the tackles, and that's something that you didn't see
He's
lot
a lot
of.
bigger than you think he is.
Exactly. So
Especially now. He's definitely eating well. Check him out on the NFL Network, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
There's a number that stood out to me, and it was 400. 400 touches for, I want to say it was either 7 or 8 seasons straight. 400 touches. And backs aren't built like that anymore. Pretty much every back after that or around the same time who touched 400 in one season fell off the next season. Chris Johnson, Sean Alexander, Deuce McAllister, DeMarco Murray. Like, anytime anyone touches 400, the next season, everybody says no.
He went 7 seasons.
7 or 8.
Yeah. For me, he's probably one of the best draft day trades ever. He was in the 2001 NFL draft where San Diego actually had the number 1 pick in that draft, and they traded back to number 5 with the Atlanta Falcons, who wanted to trade up for a quarterback named Mr. Michael Vick. Little known fact,
Running back named Michael Vick.
the only reason why San Diego agreed to the trade was because they wanted Tim Dwight. If Tim Dwight was not included in that trade, that deal would not have been done.
He made a list with us last year.
He did. He's in the same hiding room as Zach Thomas and Wes Welker. But yeah, he has 40 Charger franchise records. He's a Hall of Famer, obviously. LT was definitely the man. Another San Diego Charger that is on the Mount Rushmore that I thought we all had, but he's not on Dev's list, is Mr. Junior Seau, a.k.a. the Tasmanian Devil. Junior Blue, why is he on the Chargers Mount Rushmore?
Because for 11 years, he was the face of the Chargers.
Yes.
The Tasmanian Devil, he won Defensive Player of the Year. At a position of linebacker, he missed no more than 2 games out of 11 seasons, and he suffered for it.
I was gonna say
he paid the price for it,
the ultimate price.
But he was there. He was the face. He was the face of all of San Diego, really.
Yes.
And there's no way you can have him not on the Mount Rushmore.
Last week when I talked about jerseys with the Raiders and I said 0-0 for Otto stands out, 75 for Howie Long, 55 Chargers jersey, you think of one person and you know what that jersey is. That's for Junior Seau, who was the first Polynesian and Samoan to be inducted into NFL's Hall of Fame. Omar, why did you have him on your Mount Rushmore?
Besides all the numbers,
Yeah.
it was his instincts. That's something you can't teach. When a player, somehow this player is in the right place at the right time to make the tackle all goddamn game.
Yeah.
1,849 tackles.
Yeah.
Like but that's not something. Again, it's not something you can teach. That's instinct. That means you can see it, you can diagnose it, and you're there.
Kev?
Yeah, I mean, in addition to that, 10-time All-Pro. I mean, you talk about his instincts. I think the way in which he played the game, his leadership, his excitement. I mean, I would put him on the Mount Rushmore of linebackers all time. I mean, I think his approach to the game, I think, can be compared to Ray Lewis and the way that he got his team up and that he led. And, one thing that he said that stuck out to me was simple, but it was something that, you don't hear much in today's game, given what some of the athletes are going through. But, he said, I get paid to practice. I play the game for free. Le'Veon might disagree, but I think just to hear statements like that being said by his contemporaries, Rodney Harrison, spoke highly of him, Bill Belichick, of course, when he ended up going up the Patriots, but just the way he approached the game, and I think he does get overlooked because he was on so many terrible Charger teams, something that Kenyon didn't have to suffer through because he wasn't on the wagon yet.
Let's also end this round by saying that he's a Trojan. Rest in peace, Junior Seau. Kev, I'll stay with you. You have a certain quarterback on your Mount Rushmore. Talk about Mr. Dan Fouts.
I do. The bearded one, Mr. Dan Fouts, won Offensive Player of the Year in 82. Was on the 80s All-Decade team. In 79, he became the second player to ever throw for 4,000 yards in a season. Led the league 4 times in passing, twice in touchdown passes. He was the face of the most prolific passing offense in history up to that point, and accomplished that without ever playing in the shotgun, which I think is huge because it's almost impossible to do that nowadays. Without playing in the shotgun. Now, it led to him throwing almost as many interceptions as touchdowns. But the fact that he was able to produce in that offense at that time when the league had never seen anything like that, Dan Fouts was that dude. And then in 2009, the fans voted him the greatest Charger of all time. Played his whole career there, so I think Dan has to be on that list.
I think what stands out the most for me is the fact that he was voted the number 3 quarterback in the decade of the 80s, which had Joe Montana, Marino, Elway, and all those cats that all went to Hall of Fame. Jim Kelly, all those guys.
Or a lot of are talked about way more than him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When he retired, he had 6 3,000-yard passing seasons. That was the most in the NFL at that time. Mm-hmm. And for him to open it up and get those kind of stats in an era, again, was dominated by the run. We bring this up, but eras do matter. And to me, his success or lack of success kind of reminds me of maybe he was the first Dan Marino. Like, you think of him being prolific and passing, but not really ever getting over the hump. He led the league in passing 4 straight years and touchdowns twice, which was pretty big back then. 6-time Pro Bowler. And although he won Offensive Player of the Year in '82, he got the the Pro Football Writers Association. He got that MVP, but he didn't get the league MVP because they gave it to a kicker. That was a strike shortened year, I believe.
Well, a couple things. To bring it all back to the beginning for what this show is today, he averaged 320 yards passing per game in 1982. Mm-hmm. That record stood for 38 years till Drew Brees averaged 342 yards a game.
Wow.
And the other thing was his agent was the greatest man ever. In the 1987 strike, he was the only one still getting game checks because his agent put a clause in his contract that if there's a strike, he still gets paid.
That's who was his agent?
Bud Asher. He used to go up there right there next to him on the Hall of Fame. Yo, only player ever.
Hey, you know what? All you NFL players, you might want to, if you got a contract that needs to be negotiated, you got about 1 year. Mm-hmm. That's a good clause to put in there.
And it was a short strike, but he was the only one still got paid.
Omar, we'll stay with you because one of Dan Fouts' main weapons was a tight end, Mr. Kellen Winslow.
Senior.
There's a huge distinction.
Mr. Winslow, he changed the NFL game for tight ends. Mm-hmm. Before Winslow was a tight end, they were considered blockers more than wide receivers and catching the ball. But the funny thing about Winslow is he didn't start playing football till he was a senior in high school. But when you have coaches who see that this dude is 6'5" and he runs a 4.6, he's 265 and 256 and runs a 4.6, they want you to play football. But it didn't come to him till late in life. And once Don, is it Coryell? Once he got his hands on him, and they changed the game, all of a sudden, every great tight end afterwards had to be able to block and catch.
Yeah.
I have a quote from Mr. Coryell who said, "If we were asking Kellen to block a defensive end and not catch passes, I'm not a very good coach." that speaks volumes. I mean, I think, and I didn't have him on my list, but I think Gates might be the all-time tight end for this organization, but there would be no Antonio Gates if it was not for Kellen Winslow.
Yes, he changed the idea, the make and the model of the tight end that we see more frequently today. The Gronkowskis, you think about the
Tony Gonzalez,
Jeremy Shockey's, those downfield, Jimmy Graham.
And watch this. He played in 81 less games than Ozzie Newsome and had 45 TDs. Ozzie had 47. just to bring it back again.
Yeah. So we talked about Don Coryell, and Don Coryell is someone that I had on my Mount Rushmore. I believe Junior Blue and Kev had him on there. This is Air Coryell.
Changed the game.
It was a game changer. Down the field passing. It revolutionized football in the 70s and the 80s. Started out at San Diego State. I'll just talk about his coaching legacy or his tree. John Madden, Joe Gibbs, Al Saunders, Al Saunders was the offensive coordinator for the greatest show on turf that we know is for the Rams. Dick Vermeil, the head coach of that team also. This guy, he was the man, Junior Blue.
He definitely was. I mean, the game, I don't think we watch football the same way today if it wasn't for him. There is no Tyreek Hills because what was he going to do in the first 5 yards? He's too small. But he also brought in the tight ends. He helped with that. Could you imagine if all we had was a running back, a fullback, 2 wide receivers, 1 on each side, and a tight end?
Yeah.
The pro set dominated everything. He came up with 3 wide receivers, 4 wide receivers, floods where you have 3 wide receivers on one side. He changed the whole game that we enjoy today.
Imagination is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
One of those wide receivers, Devin, so I mentioned he didn't have Junior Seau. Instead, he had Mr. Lance Allsworth.
Bambi.
Yeah, talk about Bambi.
So before Rice and old boy from Seattle, he was the guy. Steve Largent. It was a blank. He's the first AFL player inducted to the Hall of Fame. He shattered records, the 1,000-yard receiving consecutive streak. Before he got a hold of it, it was only 3 seasons. He did 7, and Jerry Rice beat it, obviously, with 11, which is ridiculous. But he's first player to average 100 yards a game in consecutive seasons. And he helped define, to me, one of the coldest uniforms in all of sports. Those powder blues, as much as I'm not a fan, that jersey is sick.
Yeah.
And because of his success, the AFL adopted the way that Coryell and Bambi played, and they started to emulate them, which helped kind of dictate how the NFL will go about things when they did the merger. So he's got to be on the Mount Rushmore for me.
Junior Blue had one unique individual on his Mount Rushmore, Mr. Leslie O'Neal.
Well, as Kevin always likes to point out, my first name is Leslie. So as a 9-year-old kid hearing about Leslie O'Neal, I started to follow him. As a rookie, he got injured. He won Rookie of the Year, but got injured in the last game. Tore his ACL. Now, back in '87, torn ACLs was a death sentence. So he missed the following year, came back in '88, only played sparingly. But starting from '89 all the way up into '97, he averaged 12.5 sacks and only missed 1 game. And he's still the all-time leader in sacks for the San Diego Chargers. LA Chargers.
LA Chargers. Get it right.
He plays.
He said it's San Diego.
For me, I had Dean Spanos, who is the son of the original owner, Mr. Alex Spanos. The Chargers have been in the Spanos family for the past 40 years. I think now Dean's sons actually run the day-to-day operations. But when Dean took over, I believe in 1997, that was the first year that the Chargers actually went to the Super Bowl. They went to Super Bowl 29, lost to the San Francisco 49ers. He spent the first 17 years of his tenure trying to work out a deal with the city of San Diego to get the taxpayers to pay for a new stadium. It could not work out. Officially 2 years ago, he exercised his option that he had that was given to him from the NFL to move the team to Los Angeles. What Spanos is most known for,
and a new fan was born.
What Spanos is most known for, though, and the thing that I really wanted to highlight was his relationship to players. We talked about another owner who we felt like was on the Mount Rushmore for his organization, Mr. Paul Allen for the Seattle Seahawks. Very much standoffish owner, allows the football players to do their thing. Spanos is the same way, with the exception of he understands the value of supporting his players. And what I'm talking about specifically is Spanos was one of the first owners to stand up with his players and kneel with him when the national anthem protests actually begin. He kneeled with his players. He met with his players. He actually then took a group of his players to the headquarters of the Los Angeles Police Department, and they had a conversation with Charlie Beck, the police chief, to understand what it is that they could do as athletes to affect change. And he said the thing that stood out to him the most was that Charlie said, "I don't need your money. I need you guys. I need the players." And so for him, it reinforced this idea that he's doing the right thing in terms of supporting his players. Players like LaDainian Tomlinson, Phillip Rivers, they speak very highly of him in terms of his open line of communication with his players. And so I feel like the Chargers organization, even though there's still bitterness and beef around the move, Dean Spanos in particular, is someone that deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore.
LT got a Chargers tattoo.
Yeah.
He got a Jets one too, though.
He's all in. Let's get to our Brexit boot bag winner.
Thank you.
If you've been paying attention to the NFL at all this weekend, you should have a pretty good idea of who the winner is. Red O.
Oh boy, defensive back Vontae Davis. After signing a 1-year deal with Buffalo during the offseason, Davis was a healthy scratch in week 1.
I love that picture.
As the Bills started Tre'Davious White and Phillip Gaines instead of him. Now, there was a healthy shellacking by the Baltimore Ravens in week 1. So in week 2, the coaches decided to start Davis. He was inserted into the starting lineup after the week 1 loss. He had 2 tackles in the first half. At halftime, my man decides to tell the coaches, training staff, and anybody who would listen, "I quit. I'm done. I'm out this piece. Kaput, finito. I can't play anymore." And he leaves. He doesn't stay on the sidelines. He doesn't support his teammates. He gets dressed, clears out his fucking locker, and gets the fuck out of Dodge. And every player who's ever played the game, anybody who comments has said they have never heard anything like this before. Not only was it what's the word I'm looking for? Disrespectful, unprofessional,
Pick one.
cowardly, because it makes it even worse is he knew at the time the team was they were down to 2 DBs without him. Everybody was injured.
They started the game with 4.
And when he leaves, that means they have to play a whole half with only 2 players healthy at that position, and he still decides to leave. And if that ain't the most cowardly bullshit you can ever do, and for that reason, not only can he get the fuck out of here with that bullshit, Vontae Davis is the Brexit Boot Bag Award winner. Bitch ass.
Can I offer a rebuttal?
What?
Talk your shit, Kev.
Vontae made a business decision. He was not sticking around for none of that. But listen, can you blame him though? At some point, you just realize you don't need this shit no more, man.
I can blame him if I'm
but
that
are you
second
serious?
corner.
For real?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Listen, I'm not mad at him. When the Ravens beat the brakes off of them in week 1, I stopped watching the game. I could only imagine what it's like for somebody out there.
Kev, it's not about
the funny. Go ahead.
It's not about what he did; it's how he did it.
At halftime, though,
Like,
Vontae, I'm bruh.
He basically said, fuck you, you cool, I'm out.
What made this funny though is that his brother Vernon Davis can't stop getting picked up by NFL teams. I don't know how he's still playing, but hey.
Would it mean anything to you if I told you that he's from PG County?
They some Bamas. I don't expect it.
Let's get back to our moments in hand, Dag. We wanted to have a discussion, and it will be a brief discussion, around what I believe is probably the most pivotal crossroad moment for the Chargers organization outside of what happened 2 years ago. And that is the big what if of the 2006 offseason, where Drew Brees was the quarterback. He got injured. and they decided to not offer. Well, they did offer him a contract. The contract they offered was the pay equivalent to a backup quarterback because he got injured in week 17.
Which you were going to be.
And they had this young rookie, or actually second-year player waiting in the wings in Phillip Rivers. And, we wanted to sort of look at the what-if behind that pivotal moment. So I will start with you, Dad, in terms of you sort of looking at and identifying what stood out to you about that.
Yeah, so in 2006, they actually went 14-2. I think they had the best record in
That's right.
the AFC. They had the best O-line in the league, best running back, and the best fullback. So if they keep Mr. Brees and they stay there, they probably, in all actuality, win the Super Bowl. Because when they lose in the playoffs to the Pats, Mr. Rivers went 14-32 with a fumble and a pick and no touchdowns. So what happens that year? The Chargers are way more talented than the Colts, or Indy, excuse me. They beat them, and they go to Super Bowl 41, and who do they play? The Chicago Bears.
It started off good.
Fuck you.
Marty Schottenheimer doesn't get fired immediately.
Right, because he was going to get fired. Because this whole mess started because of Marty.
So if they win the Super Bowl, then they keep Brees. They extend him. He stays there. They still have this rookie. They have the luxury of trading Rivers. And what teams needed quarterbacks at that time?
Oh.
The Browns, the Raiders,
The Chicago Bears.
So if they don't make the trade, the Saints probably pick up the top quarterback that was chosen, which was Vince Young.
Ooh.
And if he goes to the Browns, that next year, that was the year the Browns went 9-7 or 10-6 and almost made the playoffs with Derek Anderson. He's at least worth one more win. Or if he goes to the Raiders, they don't draft Jamarcus. And that's a whole nother pick that they have at number 1. Changes the whole landscape of everything.
They'd probably take Calvin Johnson in that draft.
Won't he?
Do you guys think that, hindsight's 20/20, but can you blame them for the decision that they made based on what they knew at the time? Because the injury that Brees suffered was,
Rotator cuff.
Andrew said it was one of the most unique injuries he's seen. It was like a 360 tear of his rotator cuff. And you look at where Brees was in his career, contract year coming up. I don't know why the hell Marty Schottenheimer had him in the game to begin with, but but knowing that
I can answer that. It was a pissing contest between him and that great GM, Mr. A.J. Smith.
That's exactly what it was.
but seeing what happened with Chad Pennington around the same time, he suffered an injury. We saw his career jump off a cliff. I can't blame them for the decision, but I do agree, Dev. I think their playoff success may be slightly different if they have Drew Brees, a healthy Drew Brees at quarterback.
Here's the thing. The whole situation is crazy because, it was supposed to be, they drafted Eli.
Right.
They didn't draft Phillip Rivers.
That's right.
They drafted Eli. Eli said, fuck that. I'm not going out to butt fucking Egypt in San Diego. I want to play in a big market, and my name is Manning, and I'm going to do this. And that's what happened. That's exactly what he said. He dropped his nuts, and they traded him.
Yes, they did. And drop their nuts.
But if you think about it, Rivers took 2 years. Like, he couldn't supplant him year 1. He couldn't supplant him year 2. It took an injury to supplant him.
Because he wasn't given the opportunity. Because good old Marty didn't want to give him that shot.
Because he knew what Drew Brees was. Drew Brees was, and I could be a little biased. I will admit that at the time he was my favorite quarterback in the league. Him and LT were my 2 favorite players in the league at the time. And I've always felt that San Diego Chargers or the Chargers, their history would have been dramatically changed if they kept those two playing together.
LaDainian said that too. He said no knock to Phillip Rivers, but if Drew Brees was at quarterback that 14-2 season, it would have been a wrap.
Yeah, and Jay Cutler would have went to the Titans.
God willing.
Hey, I took it a step further. I said, what if they never drafted Phillip Rivers? So they had the second worst defense in 2003, and they ended up with the number 1 pick. They trade the number 1 pick and trade back.
Right.
They get Sean Taylor to help that defense out.
Wow.
Now
He fucked me up with that one.
Yeah. So now
You might not be in Miami that
Why
night.
is,
No,
Les, Les talking about life and death
Hey,
right
so,
now?
Hey, the rabbit hole is
so
real.
think about this. They would have had Sean Taylor at safety, Marcellus Wiley on their D line, Donnie Edwards as their middle linebacker.
Yeah.
They still
Jamal
would have had
Williams.
they still would have had the Giants pick the next year. They would have had Drew Brees. Wait, get this: a young LT, a young Antonio Gates. They would have had David Boston, Rashae Caldwell as their wide receivers. Young. I put young in there because they lasted a little too long. And maybe they would have been able to get. Now, think about Sean Taylor. Instead of playing Tampa Bay, November 25th, and staying in Florida, instead escaping the cold of Washington, D.C., he would have been at home in San Diego. He wouldn't have been home November 27th. So you put that team together and let that team grow, they knock off New England.
Don't forget Williams in the middle of that D line.
Yeah.
Hold on. What year did they trade for Phillip Rivers in the draft? Was that 04?
That was 4-4.
In 05, they drafted Sean Merriman,
Yep.
right?
So they still would have had him because they would have drafted back. They still would have had the
Yeah.
Giants. They still would have had that Giants first round pick.
The devil.
Damn.
Yeah.
You Debbie Downer ass motherfucker.
Let's hurry up and get out of here before Omar says something else crazy. Let's get to our football tea and hot topics. Let's start with Mr. Josh Gordon, who is now a member of the New England Patriots, because this weekend, Saturday or Friday to be precise, he told the team that he was doing a promo video and wanted to use the Cleveland Browns facilities. They allowed him to do that because this was supposed to be for his clothing line, Flash Clothing Line. Well, it turns out that he was actually doing a hype video for social media purposes. And in this hype video, he started to do football workouts, one of which was a 40-yard dash, which is where he pulled up lame with a hamstring injury. And then Saturday, he compounds the lie by showing up to his team meeting 10 minutes late, at which point he doesn't tell them exactly how he got hurt. He just says, I have an injury. So it sends off all types of alarm bells, and Cleveland says, you know what, you're finished and you're done.
That's what did it, though.
That's what did it. So, the question I have for you guys is, number one, who in here is surprised that he went to the Patriots?
We said this a year ago. And wasn't he inebriated when he showed up, or they said he wasn't himself?
They said he wasn't him. They said he wasn't himself.
Yeah.
Which is probably because he was scared about lying, because they just had another player.
Which means he wasn't looking nobody in the eye. His eyes were down.
And when you have a history of abuse like him, your mind goes places. And allegedly, supposedly, he did have some sort of a slip up earlier in the summer, which is part of the reason why he ended up going to rehab or wherever he went at the start of training camp.
He was looking like Callaway in Hard Knocks.
So they they didn't trust it, and that's literally was the statement, is that he officially broke their trust anyway. Kevin, what do you expect to happen in New England though?
First off, I want to say I think we're missing the big picture here is that the Cleveland Browns must be that bad of an organization for someone to go through 5 years of self-destruction just to get the fuck out of there. and now that he is gone, the fan in me hopes he doesn't see the field. But the human being in me, this is it for him, man. He's got to show up here, and there's no better place to get your mind right than with Tom Brady and Belichick and with the other weapons that they'll have once the season gets going. I'm afraid to say this might work.
Does anyone think that he might not be able to grasp the playbook like others before him, like Chad Johnson?
Yep.
See, I have that thought, and I thought about that. But the thing is this, Chad Johnson, some of those other players, they run more internal routes, right? This is a stretch to fill. This is Randy Moss. Let's be clear here. When Randy Moss played for New England, he ran two routes, a deep post, and he ran a go.
But let's be clear, he's not Randy Moss.
No.
He's not Randy Moss.
He's not Randy Moss, but he's not
But
far off, though.
he's talented.
He doesn't have Randy
He's-
Moss's football IQ. Which is
You don't need what my
You
point
don't need
is.
it
You don't
when you
need
can
football
get
IQ if
butt
you're
naked
running a streak or if you're running a deep post. And
Y'all hella disrespectful to Randy Moss.
Really?
no, I'm not being disrespectful.
Yeah, you are.
No, the thing
he
is,
hasn't done shit to be compared to Randy Moss.
no one's
Now,
comparing
I'm
him to
not
Randy
putting
Moss.
him in that class, but if you watch the 5 games that he played in the last 10 years, every time he runs those 2 routes, he's wide open.
Right. Exactly. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know because he's literally one failed test away from being banished from the league. So when
real
you say
quick,
this
though,
is
He
it,
won the
Kevin,
eye roll from being cut from the Patriots.
This whole move with him, though, says a hell of a lot about Des Bryant. That they would go through all of this to give him a job instead of Des. That's crazy to me.
It's telling.
again, Dez is the boo bag winner for the season. Roughing the passer in the Green Bay, Minnesota game, which coincidentally, this is the second week in a row that we have had a tie. I don't know that there's been an NFL season where the first 2 weeks have had games that have ended in a tied
I bet you Donovan McNabb would know.
result. But in the Green Bay, Minnesota game, you had Michael Kendricks and Clay Matthews. And in Clay Matthews' case, it was a pretty pivotal call, ending or being flagged for roughing the passer. Specifically, it's centered around these 2 sort of ideas. One is that you're throwing your body weight on top of the quarterback, which coincidentally is not what Clay Matthews in particular was penalized for. He was penalized because apparently part of roughing the passer now is that you cannot take the legs out. As you're making a tackle, you can't scoop. You can't take the legs out from the quarterback, which begs the question, what is Clay Matthews, or what is anybody for that matter, supposed to do if you are rushing the quarterback?
Clay Matthews is a separate question.
Right. To quote the policeman that told Porter at the famous Dodger game that we got thrown out of.
Whatever
it's
the fuck I say it is.
And that's exactly what it is. Because it's going to be so subjective. Like, we're not going to be able to tell from week to week. It's going to depend on the ref.
Honestly, I think quarterbacks are going to get hurt because players are going to start running through them. Mm-hmm. So you're not scooping. You're actually hitting them like they are a running back or a wide receiver coming across the middle because you don't land on top of them. Mm-hmm. You're not scooping. You're just driving straight through them. And that's what's going to get them hurt.
Chris Sims' career, his quarterback career was never the same because his spleen got busted up in that exact
and
same
part
way.
of the problem is we're getting into wide receiver catch territory where refs are confused about what the hell is the penalty.
Because I knew what a catch was last year. I sure as fuck don't know this year.
Yeah, and I mean, add this to the list of things that we don't know. But my frustration with this is that it, virtually decided the outcome of a game. When that happens, I think that's when you hear more backlash and see people more upset about when and why they're making these calls.
I just hope the players are keeping a list of things to discuss come 2020.
They not. wait till the first one gets slung down, like grabbed and thrown down, and then they hit the head on the ground, and then they gonna call that. But that's not the letter of the law. That's not what they're saying is roughing the passer. But someone's gonna do it because they can't land on them, they can't scoop them, so they're just gonna grab them and throw them down like a child.
Yes, they should.
Let's go rapid fire here. Biggest 2-0 surprise so far in the NFL: Kansas City, Denver, Tampa Bay, Red O.
The swag king, Fitzmagic. Tampa Bay.
I agree with you. Dad.
Tampa Bay, look who they beat.
Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay.
Kevin, unanimous. Tampa Bay, biggest 2-0 surprise.
Tampa Bay, but we're going to find out on Monday night.
Who's in bigger trouble? The 0-2 New York Giants, who don't have a line, or the 0-1-1 Pittsburgh Steelers? Junior Blue.
Giants. They have an issue that they can't solve. they have too many weapons and can't get the ball to any of them.
Dad?
Pitt, because they can't solve the dysfunction.
It's getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
Red O.
Foreshadowing.
If it was any other team besides Pittsburgh, I would say them. But that ownership doesn't fire coaches, and that's part of the problem. So I'm gonna go with the Giants.
Okay. Kev?
It's the Giants, and for the point that you mentioned, Kenyon, their offensive line is terrible, and Eli realized that other teams is out there hitting.
I think right now it's Pittsburgh because of the dysfunction, but I think for the future it is the New York Giants because, as I've said before, and I probably said it on confirmation bias, Cleveland messed up 2 teams when they took Baker Mayfield. When they took Baker Mayfield.
But hold on there, buddy.
But I'm drinking. When they took Baker Mayfield. When they took Baker Mayfield,
Yeah, there you go. You got it.
Eford.
right? When they took Baker Mayfield 1, they messed up 2 teams. They messed themselves up because they should have taken Saquon, and they messed up the Giants because they forced the Giants to take Saquon instead of the Giants taking the quarterback of the future. Because what I saw Sunday night in Eli Manning's eyes, I saw a guy
That meme?
No smoke.
I
I
saw a
want
guy
no smoke.
that said, "I'm 37 years old and I've won 2 Super Bowls, and if my first read isn't there, I'm taking a dive."
But y'all mad at Vontae Davis. Come on, man.
He finished the goddamn game, though.
Shout out to Frank Gore, who is now 4th on the all-time rushing list. Is he a Hall of Famer, Kev?
Who the fuck is Frank Gore?
And
That's
a good question.
Who the fuck is Curtis Martin?
I knew
Same
who he
thing.
was. Like, he is.
Yeah,
go ahead, Kev.
Go ahead, Kev.
But
And
to
hit
me,
the John
Curtis
Cutter
has
button.
more relevant success, and I think that was one of the knocks that we had on Tomlinson. Is like he didn't necessarily do it in the playoffs, and for Frank Gore, he's like been that plow horse really, but he doesn't have significant accomplishments in big games, and I think he just inched his way up as a dark skinned running back.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hey, he's only 1,100 yards behind Barry.
He's going to get there. And the thing that's remarkable about Frank
Not
Gore...
this year.
Yeah, no.
It
might take him 3
In 3 years. It's going to take him 3 years. He'll do it for 3 years. The thing that's interesting about him
3
is
different teams.
he came into the league with 2 reconstructed shoulders and 2 reconstructed knees.
That's a tough man.
There is no way in hell that you could have told me that he'd be 4th on the all-time rushing list. And I was with you, Omar, about who is Frank Gore in terms of the Hall of Fame discussion, but then you said it, and it's right. Who is Curtis Martin?
He just passed him.
He's going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
Oh, he's
absolutely.
definitely in the Hall.
Yeah, he should be first back. If you number 4, like, that's insane.
Yeah, but you know, they say one of the Hall of Fame arguments is always, can you tell the story of football or can you tell the story of basketball without this player? I can tell the story of football 3 times over without Frank Gore.
Forever.
Interesting news today. A lot of select members of the NFL Hall of Fame, led by, I believe, Mr. Eric Dickerson, who we know doesn't hold his tongue for anybody, basically submitted a letter to Roger Goodell saying that retired NFL players should still have health insurance and should still be paid some sort of compensation, I believe. And as a form of protest, this is the 100th anniversary. This upcoming year will be the 100th anniversary of the NFL Hall of Fame. And that as a form of protest, a select group of Hall of Famers, and if you don't know about the story, I encourage you to look at the story. The names on there are very recognizable, some of which are very recent Hall of Famers. They're saying that they're not going to participate in the festivities around that anniversary. Newsworthy or nothing to see here. Red O.
I think it is newsworthy, but I also think it's a negotiation tactic, whereas they really only want medical coverage because they know good and well they're not getting paid. But at the same time, it depends on the momentum, because if you can actually get Hall of Famers who are about to go in the Hall of Fame to start backing those players, then you have something. Like the people who are not, what's his name, who just didn't go to the Hall of Fame?
T.O.
You get the players who are supposed to go and they don't go because they're backing the boycott. Then you have momentum where the NFL is backed into a corner.
Junior Blue, I want to come to you on this. He mentioned the word negotiation, but then it broke just about a couple of hours ago. Jerry Rice and Kurt Warner,
Bitch ass.
2 really big names, said, hey, we're supporting what Eric Dickerson is talking about, but our name should not have been included on this list, and we are going to be there for the 100th anniversary celebration. So are you already losing leverage because you put names on the list that shouldn't have been on there?
Already losing it. It's, I mean, that's how the NFL players work too.
Exactly.
Harriet Tubman could have freed 1,000 more slaves if they just would have known. Keep moving forward. We're good.
Judge.
All right, so we're going to get into our brand new segment that we released this year, All In with Ken, which is sponsored by MyBookie. That's MyBookie.com. Yes. A minimum deposit of $50, and MyBookie will match your bet 100% up to $1,000. Last week, Mr. Kenny Ken went 1-2. We are 3-3 for the season, though. So what it do, man? How you going to get us rich?
Number one, Indianapolis versus Philadelphia. The total game line is 48. Take the under. You've got Frank Wright, former offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles, going back against Jim Schwartz. There's a ton of familiarity there. It's also the return of Carson Wentz, but he has no receivers to throw to. No Jay Ajayi. Take the under in there at 48. The second game that I like is Les's Oakland Raiders on the road against the Miami Dolphins. Defensive coordinator Paul Gunther is 2-0 versus Adam Gase. And in both of those games, Adam Gase's teams have a total of 6 turnovers, including 5 interceptions. Miami is also currently 5th on the season in giveaways. Oakland right now is the underdog. +3, take Oakland to cover. I actually like them to win straight up, but take them to cover as a 3-point underdog. And then finally, our funky monkey game of the week.
No.
Say it again.
The funky monkeys is coming.
Last week, it was the Chargers going to Buffalo. This time, it's Buffalo going to Minnesota. They made the line 16.5. This is one of those, you can't make that line high enough. Minnesota is going to beat the dog shit out of the Buffalo Bills. Now, what I recommend is this, folks, to be perfectly honest with you. Take Minnesota just to win the game because we know they're going to win. But I would actually recommend you tease that line down. It's 16.5. Tease it down to 9.5 just to be safe. But I like Minnesota to win straight up in the Funky Monkey game of the week. Once again, that's MyBookie, MyBookie. Go there. The promo code is 32KR. Promo code 32KR. You put $50 down, they'll match it up to $1,000 or match it up 100%. So if you put money down, at least $50, they'll give you money on top of that and take these bets and make yourself a winner. Let's get to our game picks before we get out of here. We will start in the city of Atlanta, where we've got the New Orleans Saints going against the Atlanta Falcons. Our season records, everybody is still pretty close. It's early in the season. Omar hasn't fallen off the wagon yet, but just give it a few weeks. New Orleans versus Atlanta. Who you got, Redo?
New Orleans.
New Orleans. Dad.
Falcons.
Falcons.
Falcons at home.
You got Falcons at home. I got the Saints because they're healthier. Keanu Neal, Deion Jones, Andy Levitre, Devontae Freeman, Tack McKinley, all these guys are out. Kev?
I was going with the Falcons till you said that.
Shit.
The Battle of L.A. L.A. Chargers versus L.A. Rams.
You're going first.
I am picking...
Huh?
I'm going to pick the Chargers.
The fuck out of here.
The Chargers are...
It's going on the sheet.
That's put it on the sheet. I'm taking the Chargers. Junior Blue.
The Rams.
The Rams.
Rams.
Kevin, come on, man.
Kenyon, you set tripping. Rams.
Cincinnati versus Carolina, who to me, this is my favorite game of the week. We've got the Cincinnati Bengals going to Carolina. Really good game. Who you got, Dad?
I have the Panthers win a close game.
Okay. Junior Blue.
Panthers.
Panthers.
Mixon's out, isn't he?
Mixon is out for a couple of weeks. He's got some floating debris in his knee that needed to be removed. Red O.
I am still torn. I think it's going to be one of the best games of the week. I've been leaning towards Cincinnati. I'm going to take Cincinnati.
I like Cincinnati too. They play Thursday night. They'll be the fresher team. And frankly, they're the better team right now. Kev.
Battle of the Cats. I'm taking the Panthers.
All right. Well, this has been another episode of 32 Kings Road. Once again, follow us everywhere on social media. Our handle is @TheLeagueAM. That's Twitter, that's Facebook, that's Instagram. Please check out our website, theleagueam.com. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, League Ambassadors, that not only has all episodes of 32 Kings Road, but also our off-season show, Confirmation Bias. Let's get our shots of water and juice together.
If you are in a Survivor League, pick whoever's playing against the Bills.
Cheerio!
7 names, no games as I run it down the line. We got Kenny Ken put 100 on a cheese with the streak for the cash. ESPN. Seth Curry with the shot. The prodigy. In reality, he's more like Seth, but he's all we got. Up next is Gentleman Jack, better known as Junior Blue. We told him not to do it anyway, but he did what he do. To his right is Devin, that dude, Eldad or Dirt Ass Dan. Just don't ask him a question, cause then he'll answer your question with another question, and then he'll add another question on top of that question. Damn. And I'm Red O, the Buck Wild Problem Child.
Flow butter, aka John Cutter.
It's the league ambassadors, and we playing to win. At the 2-yard line, and make no mistake, we running it in.